It all started on a seemingly uneventful, chilly Tuesday night at the end of February. A parody account called Drunken Brian France made a tweet stating that it probably won't be announced until much later in the season, but Brad Keselowski will replace Jimmy Johnson in the 48 next year. Little did I know when I first saw that tweet that this would send the NASCAR community into chaos. Even the great Chinry 20 gave his input on the situation. I mean, there wasn't a person on Twitter that wasn't talking about this, and obviously there was that whole media scandal, but still, the eyes of Twitter was just all over Brad Keselowski to the 48, and now it's time for me to put in my input.
Lesson from the brain, seeing the beauty through the...
What is up, YouTube? Why was the coloring so off? Holy crap, chill, dog. Anyways, what is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the video, and today we are going to be talking about all the speculation about Brad Keselowski going to the 48 car. I might put a little bit of input on other candidates briefly, but the main focus of the video is going to be Brad Keselowski to the 48. So if you guys do enjoy, make sure you like, hit the subscribe button, and comment down your guys' thoughts. Let me know what you guys thought about that little intro thing. Trying some different stuff here, and let's get right into the video. So first we have to look at the why. Shout out to my hair. Why would Brad Keselowski go to Hendrick, and why would Hendrick want Brad Keselowski? Well, for Hendrick, it's simple. If you look at Hendrick, Jimmy Johnson, 7-time champion, might have heard of him. He is retiring at the end of the season. They now have a spot vacant in that ever so storied 48 team, and they're looking to replace it. Now, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but you know, if you were to look at the surface, maybe Noah Gragson would seem like the most likely replacement because he's already in the system, but he has not performed nearly well enough to warrant a Cup Series ride. So if you look at this free agent pool, Kyle Larson comes to name, and Ross Chastain could be an underdog. I believe Corey LaJoie even gave like a letter to Hendrick or something like that. But Kyle Larson has really been the main front runner up to this point for that 48 team. Most people saw Brad Keselowski as a, you know, just going back to the two. Nobody has really doubted that up until this point. But why would Hendrick want Brad Keselowski to join his team? Well, it's very simple. The man's a champion. He's gets about 3 wins a year. He's probably, if you were to join Hendrick, he'd be the most consistent driver besides Chase Elliott. They'd probably, he brings veteran experience that Jimmy Johnson, however this season, as the season is looking positive so far, hasn't necessarily brought that veteran stability that Brad Keselowski would bring to that 48 team. And that's not a knock on Jimmy Johnson, but you can't deny he's been very inconsistent the past couple of years. So I'm sorry, Jimmy Johnson fans. Hopefully he turns it around. It looks like he actually very much did at Las Vegas, and we'll see if he is able to for the rest of the season. But Brad Keselowski would bring that stable veteran presence of consistency, something that Chase Elliott needs to learn. And hopefully if Brad Keselowski were to come, he would help Chase Elliott out, because Chase Elliott is maybe one of the more inconsistent drivers in the sport still. But I mean, one thing is consistent, that he's fast. But anyways, that is why Hendrick Motorsports would want him. Consistent veteran in the prime of his career, and a championship contender whether you like it or not. Alright, we got the hat back on. But why would Brad Keselowski want to go to Hendrick. I mean, Penske is better equipment, more consistent equipment than Hendrick Motorsports. Hendrick has been on a down, as Penske hasn't necessarily been on a steep incline, but they did just win a championship a year back, or not. You guys know when they won a championship, and have seen improved results, in recent years, or at least steady, and has been consistently one of the top teams in the sport for quite a while now. And why would you want to leave that? Well, let's look at Brad's situation here. He just got a new crew chief, Jeremy Bullins, who, of the 3 crew chiefs at Penske, is most definitely the weakest of the 3. And he just lost his Miller sponsorship. I mean, yeah, he still has it. It's on the side of the car every once in a while, or not the side, just like really small. You can barely tell it's there. Part of the car for some races, not even all races in the season. And then I believe they are the main sponsor for the Coke 0600. Now, granted, I think that seems Discount Tire has kind of filled that void, so I'm not sure if that's a Penske or Brad Keselowski sponsor. Seems to be a Brad Keselowski sponsor because they don't sponsor anybody else. But Brad Keselowski has, lost his sponsorship in Miller that's been a partner with Penske for over a decade now, and which is a sad thing to hear, but that's not necessarily Brad Keselowski's fault. He definitely has performed to warrant it, but for whatever reason has not been able to retain that sponsorship. But another reason, if we go back to our crew chief point, is that Jeremy Bullins in his first race did not necessarily impress. He got a decent finish. I believe it was like a top 10. He got a top 10, but he seemed a step behind Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano. He's similar to what Ryan Blaney looked like last season. Was always fast, consistently in the top 10, but there's something that he couldn't get over that hump. And it seems like switching Paul Wolfe to the 22, Todd Gordon to the 12, and giving Brad Keselowski the short end of the stick with Jeremy Bullins has definitely worked out for both Blaney and Logano, as in their first mile-and-a-half race. I mean, they showed out. Unfortunately, Blaney didn't get the finish, but he was in position to win, and was more likely than not, it would have had a great battle with Bowman to get first or second. But just a bad call there by both Blaney and Gordon there. But anyways, back to the Brad Keselowski part of this. He was consistently fast, just like Ryan Blaney was last year, consistently in the top 10. I think he fell back for a little bit, but came back. But he was never able to crack the top 5, really. I mean, I'm sure he did at some point in the day for a little bit, but you didn't see him in the top as a top 5 player. You saw him more in the middle to the back of the top 10, which is something that is somewhat alarming. But again, it's a small sample size, just 1.5 mile race. He could turn it around and surprise us all. But if you look at the crew chiefs, Jeremy Bullins is easily the less decorated of all the crew chiefs, as he has just 3 wins to his name. But I could be wrong. But in that sense, it seems like Brad Keselowski is getting the short end of the stick. And if we look at down into the Xfinity Series, while I'm not sure how big of a threat Austin Cindric is, he does have a father that is within the Penske organization and has some voice in that. He did perform pretty well last year and is set up to have a great year this year. So if he is able to, perform well in the Xfinity Series, that puts even more pressure on Brad Keselowski. If you look over at Hendrick's program, they got a spot open. They got Ally, which is great sponsorship. And Ally might not even have to sponsor all of them. If Discount Tire is truly with Brad Keselowski, that Hendrick could split up the Ally sponsorship with, somebody like Alex Bowman, who needs some, races picked up. But, I mean, this is obviously all speculation, but it does make sense why Brad Keselowski would want to go to Hendrick. The only negative and reason that I don't think this would happen is that the equipment is not as consistent or as well as that of Penske. And maybe it's not the equipment, maybe it's the fact that they have 3 inexperienced drivers. But I do want to point out that Jimmy Johnson is a 7-time champion, and he did not have a great last couple of years. So that's all up to speculation. But as for Brad Keselowski, there are obviously pros and cons to joining Hendrick. So what are my thoughts on it? I'm not as optimistic as a lot of people are in this situation, but I'm also not pessimistic about it. I'm kind of 50-50, if you will. I think there are things that have to play out in order for this deal to really go through. First of all, I think Hendrick has to have a revival season. Last year was a great season, but they need to improve on that, get wins, have everybody in the top 10 pretty much consistently, all 4 cars, make it to the playoffs. And I don't think they'll have a problem at least making the playoffs, getting wins, etc., etc. I'm still 50-50 on. One race has not changed my mind on the state of Hendrick at the moment. Las Vegas is a race that they did good at last year, so we're going to see at Auto Club and ISM, 2 races where they didn't do terrible, but they did their normal Hendrick stuff. If we see improvement at those tracks, that's when I want to start getting excited and start saying, hey, we might be doing good here, we might be coming back, but we're going to have to wait and see how all that plays out. But anyways, that is what Hendrick has to do to look appealing to Brad Keselowski. Now, what does Brad Keselowski have to do in order for Hendrick to look appealing to him? He's got to have a down season. Not wishing that upon him at all. You know, I'm not saying that he should have a bad season or anything like that, but I am saying that I think to really put him in the state of considering anybody else but Penske, he has to have a down year. I think the crew chief that, no offense to Bullens or anything, but that has set him up to have a down year from last year. I'm sure he'll win a race or 2 here and there, but I feel like after seeing just how behind he was, not I guess insanely behind, but kind of Ryan Blaney last season behind from Blaney and Joey Logano, I think it's very possible that we do see a dip in performance. And like I said, we're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out, but if Ryan Blaney has a down season, I don't see a reason why he would stay if he gets an offer from Hendrick, assuming Hendrick also does his part and has one of his best seasons in a while. So, like I said, I feel like a lot of situations have to play out. Do keep in mind that he also showed his threw some shade at Joey Logano. I believe it was after the clash. Threw some shade at him for his blocking abilities, which we all know is not very existent for that of Joey Logano, but he made some good points, and I agree with him on that stance. And but it's just interesting. They always seem to be pretty close knit. Seem to never really run into each other. But Keselowski seemed pretty pissed, and if we see more incidents throughout the season, that could just piss him off enough to move him out. Who knows? And also keep in mind Austin Cindric. If he does really good in the Xfinity Series, he could be a Suarez. No, not a Suarez. Suarez was actually doing bad. I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see. But like I said, it's going to have to be situations playing out. I don't think if Keselowski has a season like last season or even better than last season, there's no reason for him to leave unless he gets forced out, which is possible, but I don't see any reason why Roger Penske would force him out of the 2-car. I think if Brad Keselowski leaves Penske, it's going to be on his own will, and there's still dominoes to fall for that to happen. And to quickly touch on the other candidates, Kyle Larson, Ross Chastain, Corey LaJoie, Noah Gragson. I think Kyle Larson's the one with a real shot at it. Dark horses would definitely be Ross Chastain and Corey LaJoie, and I don't think Noah Gragson, unless he just goes off in the Xfinity Series. Even then, he might still get the cold shoulder just because he's young, and Hendrick might not want 4 young drivers. Yes, Chase Elliott is still a young driver, slowly getting to that veteran status though. And the team wants that veteran presence, like I said earlier. But I say Larson would be somewhat of a veteran presence. So, but we'll just have to wait and see with all of those. I'm not really. I'd say Larson's the best chance, and then it's just like Hendrick just might be like, all right, let's put these guys in. But like I said, he seems to be wanting to put another veteran driver to replace Jimmy. So I would say Brad Keselowski is the best to do that. Kyle Larson is kind of like a half veteran, half young gun still. But the other guys that I mentioned are all young guns, so I'd say they're probably less likely to get the job. All for today's episode. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and comment down below your guys' thoughts, and let me know what you guys think. Do you think Brad Keselowski is going to the 48? Do you think someone else is going to the 48? Tell me why. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.